What's up, everybody? Aaron Smith here with Real Estate Momentum, and I've got Tina Vansant with 360 American Title, and we're going to talk about some stuff that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot. And here's the thing. If you haven't met Tina Vansant and you are in the Northern Kentucky real estate world, you've been hiding under a rock because, girl, you are everywhere. You're at all the real estate functions. You're super supportive of us agents and highly educational. Just in talking to you right before today, you dropped a lot of knowledge out there, and you're just an awesome resource.
Well, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, and we've been doing business now, I guess, about 12, 13, 14 years. And, with us putting some information, some education out there, I wanted to have you on because a lot of times in people's real estate transactions, they never get to see anybody from the title company until they're already like signing on the dotted line, closing on the deal. And, it's very exciting, but a very nervous time.
And they don't know who we are. Like, they really don't know what our function is.
They walk into the closing table. The first thing you say is, "I'd like to see your ID, please." Yes. And you're like, uh-oh. Like,
sit down and sign this stack of papers.
Yeah, this is real. It's official. But you guys do make it very comfortable for buyers, and, you make it a nice environment. We have sat at the same closing table before where it's like super tense. Yes. There's something funky going on with the transaction. The buyer hates the seller hates the buyer because of something that happened. But you guys do a good job of calming people down, when that time comes.
And I don't understand that because, you want to sell, I want to buy. It's a great day.
Well, I mean,
it really, but you have those situations where somebody...
Real estate's stressful because people are selling big ticket items and they're picking up all the stuff that they own and moving it. So everybody's all stressed out.
And there's a lot of emotion tied to it.
Yeah, there is a lot of emotion tied to it. So because people don't get to see when we work with clients, they usually don't have an idea of what home inspector they want to use. They may have an idea of their lender. Maybe we get to recommend one. But usually nobody knows what title company they want to use. So a lot of times the agent will refer out the title company, and that's how we get to work together a lot.
Right.
So for the sake of just, general knowledge, tell us, what does a title company do in the real estate world?
You know what? We insure that the title, the house you're buying, that the title to this property is clear of any type of encumbrances, which are liens, any kind of problems.
Mortgages.
Right. So we transfer the property from the seller to the buyer, and we ensure that property, when that buyer takes ownership, that title is clean, that they don't have anything coming up behind them that's going to potentially cause them stress or money, sending them to litigation. So we go and we research the title. We go back 40 years. We do our very best to make sure that title is free and clear of any encumbrances.
You do more than just meet them at the closing table and sign their documents. Yes. So, you're at the courthouse. You're making sure that chain of title is legally pretty much clean. So I'm sure as many deals as you guys close, everything's perfect, right? There's no title issues. There's never a problem. You just waltz right into closing.
In a perfect world, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, I mean, that would be sweet if all you had to do is show up and get paid. There's no problems here.
I'd love to tell somebody, oh, by the way, you can't sell this because you don't own it.
Right.
That's happened before as well.
Well, and I think we've talked about those before. So let's talk about that. When you are combing through all these records about a house, or maybe you've got a buyer, because you also evaluate buyers and sellers on if they're able to sell and if they're not. So let's talk about some common title issues that pop up when you guys are doing your job. What are some things that you see a lot?
So the most common title issue is an unreleased prior owner mortgage. So that's not unusual, and it's usually not a big deal. You would have, a local bank, your mortgage company. You're selling the home, and when you bought it, the people you bought it from had a mortgage on the property.
Right.
The title company, it's our job to send in the payoff.
Right. So the previous owner had a mortgage. Your job's to pay that thing off so that there's no lien on it.
But we don't release it. The lender has to release it. They fall short a lot of times. Most times we simply call the lender, say it's a local bank, and we call and say, hey, we need a release. Most banks are very good about preparing the release, showing us that they intend to have it recorded, and we simply can take that off the commitment. Yeah. It's done. It's going to be taken care of. You have those times, though, where we had one gentleman owned his home for 15 years. He had he had bought it from the people. He had a seller. He was getting ready to move out of town. And when we did the title search, there was a prior owner mortgage on it. Not a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. Except for when we called the lender, and it was a well-known local bank, they had no record of this mortgage. They couldn't find any record of it.
So it's not that they couldn't release the lien. They just didn't know that it ever existed.
Exactly. Oh, wow. So therefore, they refused to release the lien because in their eyes, they weren't going to release something that they had no information on. Mm. He didn't have any information. It cost him a lot of money. He had to go to court and do what they call quiet title action so that the judge says, we'll have this taken off.
Wow.
He wasn't happy. He lost his seller. That's a common title issue that became a problem. Does that make sense? Yeah. A lot of times you'll have state tax liens. You have a lot of self-employed people. State tax liens, the only thing you have to know about that is the states have their own guidelines. If they say it's a 10-day turnaround time, it's a 10-day turnaround time.
So when you say tax liens, I'm a self-employed person, mm-hmm. and I own a house that I'm selling. Mm-hmm. And so I have a buyer. Mm-hmm. You go and pull title on the house that I'm owning, mm-hmm. and you see that I'm the owner, and I have a $50,000 tax lien that needs to be paid to the federal government, state government. State government.
Yes.
And I can't sell that house unless I pay that thing off.
That's right. Those things cannot be, even if you were refinancing, they can't be subordinated. A state tax lien, they will not subordinate it. You have to pay it off. When you say
subordinate,
which means, say you were just refinancing, and we did a search, and we said, Aaron, you've got a $50,000 tax lien on this, state tax lien on this property. You can't, they normally won't say, okay, we'll move back to second position, and you're going to pay us on a monthly basis. And then that first mortgage is going to go in first position because that's what anytime you take out a mortgage, they're going to be in first position.
Will they negotiate the amount? Like if I owe $50,000 in taxes, I need to sell my house.
That's,
has it ever happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Especially if you're dealing with the IRS. A lot of times, I don't know that it's negotiable. I shouldn't say that. What they will do is they'll let you sell your property, and they'll take every dime you have from that profit, and they'll pay that little bit off, but they attach to everything you own.
So then you have a judgment lien or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And that happens a lot to real estate agents, which is really unfortunate. Only because I think you guys get really, you have to pay for every county you do business in. You have to pay everything. So I think it happens a lot to agents. I could see where maybe something gets missed or our market changes, mm-hmm. And you get, there is relief, but it really benefits to make payments and get it off your plate. But
gotcha.
Anyway.
Yeah, because I've had that happen in transactions before where a client, they had some kind of lien on them, mm-hmm. and in order to sell their house, they had to pay off the lien, and they thought they were going to have proceeds left to go buy their next house, and it's like, yeah, you can't go buy that next house because in order to sell this one, you got to pay that lien off.
Yes.
And that
if you owe taxes, they're not very they're not very good about. They just want their money.
Yeah.
They don't really care what your situation is. But I will tell you, when we do have that, and a title company will say, state tax liens, they're very specific. They want a title company specific authorization. So, you as agents might get an authorization and say, well, Tina, I already gave it to you. It has to say 360 American Title requests, blah, 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 blah.
Got it.
Unless that's changed recently, which I don't think it has. And then we need full socials. We have had agents in the past that would argue with us and say, you only need the last four. Well, my girls they know what they're doing. They'll say, okay, we'll send it in, but I'm telling you, it's not going to work. The state will wait until the end of their 10-day period, and then they'll say, no, we're not taking it.
So unreleased mortgages,
State tax liens.
Tax liens. What are some other common things that come up? Is there you guys ever deal with like encroachments, like property encroaching onto somebody else's, or no?
We see them, but
It's not something you deal with a lot.
no, because people usually know if there's an encroachment. What we ask is that the buyer or the seller tell the buyer, hey, by the way, my fence, I didn't get that survey. It might be a little over on my I know it's over on my neighbor's property, or vice versa. And people will say, well, that's okay. I don't mind if my neighbor's fence is on my property. That's great. But what about when you sell the property? The next person might not like that. We see a lot of shared driveways. Keep in mind, lenders, a lot of lenders, not all of them, but most of them will require, they want to see an easement of record, or they want a driveway maintenance agreement.
Yeah.
Who's going to take care of that driveway? If there's 3 houses that share that driveway, you going to pay for everything?
Right.
Am I going to pay for everything? And you want it in the very beginning, because then it follows the property.
And that's something you guys help with, right? If there's a shared
Absolutely.
driveway.
We can prepare it. You want to get it recorded, and then it follows. Now, some things we do see, you'll see some weird easements that are filed, like when maybe it's a farm you're buying. We had one not too long ago where, the property was old, great farm, out in Boone County, but the original owners had filed some restrictions. Well, it follows the property, and it said you can't have a truck over so high, you can't have a trailer, you can't have cows. I mean, it went on, and that stuff follows the property.
So it limits what you can do with the property. So
Yeah.
when you guys find that stuff, you bring it up.
Yes.
And I'm sure if I was buying a property and found out that I couldn't have what I wanted to on it, it's just going to kill the deal. So
but a lot of times, if the owners of record, we help. Like in this particular case, I think the owners of record had passed away, or there was one owner left. Have that person sign off, because to go to court and have it changed is very expensive.
Yeah.
So you want to have a title company that will help you work through that, because it doesn't have to kill the deal,
Right.
but it has to be addressed.
So I want to switch gears for a second and talk about a scenario. And this is weird because it happened twice in about a 30-day window with 2 of our different clients. One was our seller and one was a buyer. Actually, no, we had the buyer on both of them. So in this situation, our buyer is wanting to purchase this condo, and we go under contract on the condo. Seller is in bad shape. Say that they're ill, right? We go under contract, and we found out that the seller was really sick, like a day or 2 before closing. Closing is scheduled for 10:30 in the morning. Or no, closing scheduled for the afternoon. We get a call at 10:30 in the morning. Seller just passed away. Our buyer is supposed to be closing on this house at like something in the afternoon, and the seller passed away. Well, she's got a will. She's got all this stuff, and her son is, the executor. It's like, can't we just move forward? So let's talk about when something like that happens. What's questions that you ask? What comes into play, and how do we fix that?
So, one, your buyer is going to be delayed in closing.
Without a doubt.
Yes. And I find it interesting that having no will is sometimes you can do an affidavit of dissent where it's still processed, don't get me wrong. But when you have a will, it still has to go to probate. Even if it clearly states, and I've argued this point, but they have to go to probate. So my suggestion would be, if you have a client who's ill and you know they're ill, have a deed prepared. Have them deed it to the son.
Like a quitclaim deed?
Yes, before closing. That they are, but they have to be cognizant.
Right.
They have to be, they don't have to be able to, they have to know what's going on. But if you know that, even if you think, you don't think they're going to die tomorrow, but you think, you know what, he's ill, he can't come to closing. How about we make it easier? Have him deed it to his if there's only one heir. Now,
Right.
if there's more than one heir, maybe because you can't use a POA for a dead person. I've had that happen.
Yeah,
where
there's no
agents-
authority after
No.
they pass.
So if they pass away, the POA is the POA is null and void. But that is simply I'm not practicing law, so I don't want to hear anyone saying but contact an attorney or have us call us.
But
and
that's
we
a
will have
possibility, though, right?
Yes,
So if
we'll
you-
have
if-
our attorney talk to you.
So if I'm representing a seller and I see that my client's ill, or maybe the majority of my communication is with the family, and I can say, hey, you might want to consult an attorney here, because if there is something that were to happen, if the property owner were to pass away
before closing,
before we convey the property, we could lose the buyer. It could delay things and all that. So if your wishes are to move forward with this without any delay, you might want to talk to an attorney to see what we can do.
What is the best
Yeah.
course of action?
And if I'm the buyer's agent, so in like hindsight, if this ever happens again, if I'm the buyer's agent and the listing agent says, hey, the seller's in the hospital, she's ill, they don't think she's got much time, then in that case, I can say, would you mind having the seller's heirs, can you have them contact an attorney about conveying the title through quitclaim or something? Like, talk to an attorney about doing this so that way our buyer doesn't get hung up on the sale.
Because that way they have that attorney is going to, and if they don't know one, I certainly know attorneys that I can recommend, but that way they are given hopefully another course of action that will, because we've had it where they died walking into closing. Now all of a sudden the poor guy, thank goodness he answered his phone, but he was POA for his mother, and as he walked in, he got a phone call from the hospital that she had passed away, and those are huge title issues too.
Oh, I'm sure.
When you talk about title issues, Kentucky and Ohio are dour states. If you have a client, ask them, because they're not always going to think it's important. Hey, you didn't get married recently, did you? Because I can't tell you how many times they'll say, oh my gosh, we got married over the weekend. It was awesome. I'm like, hold the phone. You know what? That woman has to come in, or that man has to come in. Again,
what Tina's talking about here is Kentucky and Ohio are dour states. It takes one person to buy, but if you're married, you both have to sign the documents to sell the property. What once was all yours is now...
You're splitting it
50-50.
Yeah,
you both own 50% or you both own 100% of the property. You both have to sign to sell it. And that comes up a lot in our world too. We go on an appointment, meet with the seller, and then we send over the listing documents, and it's like, oh, I bought this house before I was married. It's all mine. And it's like, yeah, but you got married. The state thinks it's not all yours anymore. Right. So we need all the signatures.
And you have to remember, the normal consumer doesn't understand. We do this for a living. You all do it. They don't know what they don't know, or they don't know what is important. It's weird. I had 2 closings within like a month and a half time where the agents didn't know. And these were not young. I just got married over the weekend. These were older people that the agents didn't even know they were married. And it wasn't until we got to a certain form, and both of them were men, and said, do I put my wife's name on this form? And, I'm like, what wife? So we had to scramble, get the wife to come in. They don't do it intentionally. They have no idea.
Yeah.
Like you said, I bought it before I was married. So anyway, it's a good question to ask.
So another brief story. We just had a buyer buy a house, and the day of closing, the seller gets their closing statement. This was not 360 American Title. The seller gets their closing statement the day of closing, and they will soon be closing on their next house. So they're closing on this house. They're going to be buying the next house. They get the closing statement, and they say, that's not enough money. Well, what do you mean that's not enough money? Well, we need money from this house to go buy our next house, and that's not enough money for us to buy our next house. So, and then I shot a quick video after that, and I was like, okay, first thing your agent needs to do after you list your house, or after you decide what price you're going to list your house, do a net sheet.
I was going to say, can't you do that sheet?
Yeah, I need a copy of your most recent mortgage statement, what's your payoff, and what's your interest. So I'm going to add all that up, and okay, here's your mortgage payoff, prorated taxes, here's your tax rate, all that. So you're going to have to pay about this much in taxes. You'll get your escrow money back from your mortgage account later on down the road, broker fees, home warranty, closing costs, anything else that might fit into there, and say at the closing table, you'll get around that number right there. Is that about what you were expecting? And it's either yeah, or wow, that was more than I was expecting, or that's not what we were thinking. Maybe we want more. It's like, well, house, we could list your house higher and try, but I don't know. So what happened here is the agent never did the calculation. They didn't know, either they didn't know what their accurate payoff was, they didn't factor in property taxes or anything like that. That leads me to something that you and I talked about right before, was proration of taxes.
Yes.
A lot of people don't understand. They pay their mortgage every single month, and it's got principal and interest, and then they have their taxes, and they have insurance in there. Those taxes get paid every month, and then the mortgage company pays it when the tax bills come out. But at the closing table, it's a little different. So let's talk about Kentucky versus Ohio on when you're at the closing table. How are taxes prorated?
So Kentucky and Ohio are very similar in a lot of ways and very different in a lot of ways. Taxes being one of them. Kentucky is current. So Kentucky county runs January 1 through December 31st. Now, Kentucky has cities that we pay taxes. An awful lot of cities are run on a fiscal calendar,
Which is like
July 1
to
June 30th.
Yeah.
So you've got two different types of prorations there. Ohio is a year in arrears. They pay twice a year taxes. They don't pay city taxes. They only pay county. But say you were closing on your house today. So the tax bill, where are we at?
May 26 is where we're
So
at.
January's tax bill covered the first half of 2021, January 1 through June 30th. So the seller has to pay July 1 through today's date. They give that credit to the buyer because the next tax bill that comes out, which is, I think it's June, due in July, is going to be for the second half of last year. Okay. So the seller has to not has to, because Indiana doesn't, but the seller gives credit to the buyer so that when the buyer gets that tax bill, they've already been given the money. A lot of buyers also think, well, Aaron, you owe me that money now. After closing. No, they gave that money.
It happened at closing.
So you're given that credit. They're simply bringing less to closing, but then their escrow account or they personally will take care of paying that tax bill.
Yeah.
In Kentucky, it would always be January 1 through whatever day you close. Now, if you're in October, a lot of times it depends on the lender. Sometimes the lenders will put 12 months in an escrow account for the buyer to pay the bill, and then the seller gives that credit. Sometimes the buyer will give credit to the seller because we'll take the money from the seller to pay the full year. So you just have to know. It's best to call your title company and know how those prorations are handled, because it really plays a part in what time of year it is.
Yeah. So just to recap and to sum it up, in Ohio, on May 26th, if I close today, I would be giving the buyer a credit for today back to the first of the year and also the last half of last year so that they could pay the tax bill when it comes out.
Absolutely.
So that's Ohio. In Kentucky, it's the current year.
Yes.
So May 26th, I would be going January 1 to May 26th. Hey, here's the money to pay my part of the taxes. When the bill comes out, it's all yours.
And if the city they're in, say it's Bellevue runs on a fiscal year, the buyer would give credit to the seller because that tax bill is good through June 30th.
Because the seller's already paid it.
Seller's already paid it.
So I had a good point to make there.
It just, like Villa Hills, a lot of cities run fiscally. I live in Edgewood. Edgewood runs on a fiscal year. Doesn't mean their tax bills come out then. Their tax bills, to me, it's the craziest thing. Tax bills usually come out end of September. Our tax bills, our tax bills come out in October. So Campbell County doesn't come out until November. But the prorations are all the same, January 1 through the day of closing.
And the moral of the story would be, if you're cutting it close on your proceeds, you're paying your taxes and insurance as part of your mortgage payment, you are going to have to pay prorated taxes at the closing table.
Yes.
You will get what's in your escrow account back about 2 to 4 weeks after the
Yes.
closing. You just need to call your mortgage company and say, hey, just closed on my house. Just wanted to let you guys know the payoff will be coming soon. Here's my forwarding address so that you can send me the money from my escrow account, right?
Yes, yes. Always have your client give that forwarding address because, and it's only my personal opinion, I'm just not a fan. Sometimes those escrow accounts have quite a bit of money in them.
Yeah.
You don't want that floating around through the post office.
Right. And I think we've just seen so many agents come into the scene lately, and just the training mechanisms for agents aren't what they used to be. Because we'd just go to the office for training, and your broker's right there, and you get all this guidance and wisdom. Training's not that readily accessible with those little details, and sometimes you don't learn those things until you go through them.
No, it's an experience thing. I think there's so many little details.
And I
that are
think
hard
that
to.
strong agents, good agents, will go over these prorations and numbers before you list the house. After you decide where the house is likely going to sell, they will go over, here's likely what's going to come out at the bottom. You don't want to end up in a situation at the closing table. You put the closing statement in front of them, and they're like, "Oh, where's the rest of my down payment on my next house?" And then that's just going to derail everything. That one only delayed us a couple of days because they found money somewhere.
Gotcha. And it's one of those things. Be your client's expert. Even if you're a newer agent, learn, go over things with your clients, and if they have questions, I've say, you know what, I'm not sure, but I will find out, and then you learn and they learn. It is so important, and I think it builds referrals. If you're your client's expert, they will remember you, and they potentially will come back to you because you took such good care of them. So
absolutely.
Anyway.
Can we talk about a not very sexy topic?
Sure.
Title insurance.
Oh, don't we all?
So going back to setting expectations,
Yes.
a lot of times the first time consumers hear about title insurance is at the closing table,
Yes.
which is the exact wrong time, because you spring on somebody that, hey, you have the opportunity to purchase insurance, and they're like, the hell is this?
Yes.
Right?
And they look at you, the agent, with like a deer in headlights, like, do I need this? And please, Aaron and I have talked about this. Don't ever tell them they do not, because you can be held responsible if there's an issue. Simply say, let's talk about it. Let's do some research.
So insurance is one of those things, and it's commonly known that you hope you never need it, but if you have it and you need it, you're glad you do.
Oh, absolutely.
So title insurance, when you guys do a title search, you go back with a fine-tooth comb. You're looking for everything you can, but there are times where
we miss things.
Maybe
people or things have been missed in the past.
Something got missed. I had one once where the person who signed to convey back 50, 60 years ago was a minor. They were under the age of 18. They were somebody's heir to a property, and they were like 17 years old. They signed on this thing. I don't know who the heck caught it or how they caught it, but at the end of the day, it needed to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. And I believe that it had to do with a driveway that was conveyed, like an easement or something like that. That was conveyed. My client, who bought the land for like $78,000, they had title insurance, and it just the problem got resolved. And I don't know what kind of red tape they would have had to gone through if they didn't have title insurance, but the fact that they did, they were just like, okay, it's going to get handled.
So title insurance, and I always, I'm sure someone, attorney out there might disagree with me, but title insurance, I tell people, if there's ever a title issue, you can't sell that property unless you fix it, right? Title insurance covers attorney's fees, because 90-something% of the time, if it's a minor title insurance, minor title problem, the title company should help you fix it. We would.
Right.
Okay? But if it's a major one, you have to hire an attorney. I don't know an attorney that isn't several $100s an hour.
Yeah, about $400 an hour, something like that.
So that's what title insurance, owner's title insurance covers. So you have lenders. If a lender thinks it's important enough to require a buyer to carry to pay for title insurance that covers them, do you not think should be important enough for a buyer to be covered as well. Because I'm telling you, if there's an issue, the lender will, the attorneys will go and they will, fight for the lender. They're not fighting for you.
Well, and the way I explain it sometimes too is that as a buyer, we'll spend $500 on a home inspection to tell us what's wrong with the house. And that $500, I'm never, ever, ever getting that back. Mm-hmm. But I now have assurance that I'm educated on what the house is. I avoided any big ticket expenses and that sort of thing. Well, this kind of fits under the same bill. I'm never going to get this insurance money back. However, if there were ever to be a problem with it,
you're covered.
I am legally protected.
It is a one-time fee. And what a lot of people don't understand, they'll say, oh, they already bought owners. It's the
lender's title insurance.
But that's the lenders. Yeah. And if you look at it, it clearly states that. So they're two different things. But it is a one-time fee. Lender's insurance covers up to the amount the bank is loaning your buyer. Owner's covers up to your purchase price. Okay, so that's really important. If you're paying $300,000 for this home and you've put 20% down, it protects your interest in that property. You've put a lot of money down. Do you potentially want to, and not that you would, but do you potentially want to lose that money? Don't you want that money to be insured?
Well, and it's not just that. It's like if something, you won't find out about a title issue until you go to sell the property again.
And there's lately, one of our processors just the other day said, used to be you had bad files, maybe 1 out of 10. Now it's 8 out of 10.
Really?
Have title issues. Whether big or small, they have something.
Something's there.
Something is wrong. We had a crazy one not too long ago where this man had been paying the taxes. He thought he owned this property 18 years. The person who owned it before them had lost all his properties. He had like 10 properties. Well, when the foreclosures were taking place, somehow this property wasn't included.
Right.
One
got stuck in there.
He thought he had lost it. This guy thought he had bought it. Don't know how the mix-up, but when we went, he was getting ready to sell it. We're like, you don't own this property.
You've been paying taxes on this for 15 years.
Yes, and when we called the other guy, he's like, so I still own this property, huh? Now he's thinking, well, pay me. We had... I don't know that any of you deal in mobile homes, but we had not one but two. When you have a mobile home, that title to that property has to be, we call it retired. Okay, when you get the property converted to real estate. Mm-hmm. We had two of them back to back, where the title had never been surrendered. From like 1976. So the person from 1976 still owned that property.
The land or the trailer?
The trailer, the I don't know about, but the whole ball of wax. The agent was able to track them down, and do you know what he said? $3,000. I'll take care of that for you.
Because they still own it?
Because they still own it. I'm like, how does the property transfer 8 times and nobody catches it? Like, that's the kind of
8
stuff.
8 owners later, and they still own it.
Yeah, and I'm not kidding, And I always hear, well, I'll just sue you. I'll sue the title company because you made a mistake. Well, that's great, but what attorney are you going to get, and how are you going to pay them? Owner's title insurance covers your legal fees. Mm-hmm. It covers, you have estates a lot of times where there's and it does happen, where there's an heir that nobody realized. Maybe dad had some kids out here and it does happen. And then all of a sudden dad dies and they come out of the woodwork like, hey, that's my daddy. That was my property.
And there's risk factors. There's red flags like foreclosure, estate, death in the family and stuff like that. Those are red flags.
Short sale, always buy. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, any kind of litigation, I tell people, you know what, be smart and buy the owners.
As far as title insurance goes, I read an article about a builder in Florida who conveyed Lot A and built the house on Lot B.
That happens.
And it was like, okay, now we have a title situation because you just bought Lot A and Lot A doesn't have a house on it.
Or how about you convey Lot A, but Lot A was supposed to be Lot B. Lot A is owned by, it's like we put a lien on your neighbor's property.
And the parcel ID numbers are right next to each other, and nobody caught it.
Nobody caught it. Yeah. A lot of times it's the legal description that screws things up. If you're not, we typically have several eyes that look at the legal to make sure that they're all correct. But you put in there that it's Lot A, and it was supposed to say Lot B. Well, now you've put a mortgage on Lot A that's not their mortgage.
Right.
That's a concern as well. We don't like to see that. We don't like to have that happen. But it's important. That's why I tell people too, when you go to a closing, if the buyer, especially new construction, make sure they look at their legal description, and they should at least know their lot number, or their section number or something. Make sure it says that, because you'd hate to, put a lien on someone else's property and then it becomes a legal battle.
Well, thanks for talking about that not so sexy topic.
I do want to say I think owner's title insurance is really important.
I get it. When we buy rental properties, or if I buy something that I know I'm going to be selling, I factor it in as an expense that's just going to have to happen, because I don't want to be excited about selling a property and moving on, and I get the phone call.
Right.
And it's like, you bought this property and this thing got missed from 8 sellers ago, that this thing never got released, and we're going to have to get an attorney involved to figure this out. And then if whether it's a 1-hour attorney problem or a 10-hour attorney problem, the title insurance pays for it. And
don't ever think, and it's not just the title companies. The county, they make mistakes too. And I had one, and I'm not going to mention what county, but I had a gentleman paid cash for his property, bought an owner's policy. 2 months later, he called me and said, my house is being foreclosed on. And I kind of laughed, because I said, that's not possible. Like, you paid cash for it, right? And he said, no, I have a foreclosure notice. So he sent it to me, and it was the county that was foreclosing on his property. So I sent my examiner down. We had a paid receipt that said taxes were paid, all good. It was during tax time, whatever. And the county, it was actually the county attorney that said, yeah, I remember that. We marked the wrong tax bill paid. It was the neighbor, and the neighbor came in and said, wait a minute, my taxes are paid. I'm not delinquent. So we flipped it. Well, the property had already been sold. So now, and then instead of calling the man or whatever, they simply filed foreclosure, went through whatever process. And so when my examiner said, well, wait a minute, we have a paid receipt. This is your fault. He said, yeah, tell him to get a good attorney. I'm sorry, what? So he had an owner's policy. And do you know, it wasn't 24 hours, the insurance company had overnighted a check. Taxes were paid. The man didn't have another worry. Was it worth that couple $100 he paid? Absolutely, because the penalties were, over $1,000. So those are, we think those are silly little things, which are really huge things that owner's policy helped him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you never want to stroke the check for something you'll never see the results off of, but that being able to rest your head on your pillow is worth it. I do it, and because I've seen stuff like this.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like your homeowners. You don't like paying it. You hope you never have to use it.
Yeah, but when that storm rolls over, you're sleeping well.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Well, Tina, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on.
Me.
Hopefully all this information has been helpful, the stories that we've told and some of the horror stories out there. But rest assured, 360 American Title, when you need them here in Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, and Indiana too, right?
Yes. And now Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yes.
You did that because you own property in Norris Lake.
I don't, but I'd like to. It's so pretty down there. If I have any friends out there,
it's a business write-off when you go down to the lake.
I'm telling you, it's a beautiful lake. But and Aaron, if anybody has any questions, if they call you, you can always call me.
You've always been a resource. If I ever have a question, if I've got a client situation going on, Tina's my first call. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for
tuning
having
in
me.
to Real Estate Momentum.